everybody. This is Tulip, and trust me, you won't even miss it.
And this is Cassidy. Human souls now in pill form. Side effects include nausea and consciousness. Who knew you could get human soul in pill form now?
I have some questions about that, so I'm super glad that we're talking about it.
This was a great episode. I'm way more happy on this episode than I am the last one.
I gotta tell you, I am too.
Yeah.
I am too. So we are talking about Preacher. This is the good news, the gospel according to Preacher. And we're talking about Sokosha, which
Okay.
was Sokosha
That
Sokosha.
I would say Sokosha. That's
Okay.
how. Which is funny because I was expecting them to mention it in the show and they
And they
never did.
didn't. Nope.
So
So it originally aired on July 24th, and it is episode 6 of season 2 of Preacher. So what is your rating?
my rating is 3.45 bunny-eared shoelaces.
We're close. Mine is 4.53 out of 5 fudgy marshmallow pancakes.
Oh, nice.
And damn it, I'm really, really pissed off at Tulip because, as I told you, I bought some ice cream and some fudge today.
So why did Tulip make you do this?
Because she made those damn pancakes that were just a way to convey marshmallows, fudge, and whipped cream to your mouth.
It was just a way to convey diabetes to you.
Right. We'll let the diabetes take its own path, right?
Exactly. So hopefully we had some good numbers.
So the numbers were a little better. Um, so first of all, it actually made the top 25 in the 18 to 49 age group for its week, which is
Nice.
the first time it's done that in a while. So, Preacher held steady. It was 1.19 million views and same day. So it was basically the same as it was last week on same day.
Okay.
It was again in the top 25 in the 18 to 49 group. But it didn't make the overall top 25 for all viewers.
Hmm.
Just to put it in perspective, once again, Game of Thrones in Live Plus 3, 11.9 million.
You can't compare it to Game of Thrones, though.
I know,
That's
you
what,
can't. You can't. I mean, it's
like,
just like you can't compare it to The Walking Dead.
yeah, we could compare it to, like, Fear the Walking Dead, which has comparable numbers. At
No,
least
because this is
for...
better than Fear the Walking Dead.
It is. It is. I will grant you that.
So the thing that I will point out, which is really, really, really tragic, in the top 25 for the 18 to 49 age group, and in the top 25 cable shows for overall Live Plus 3, it was beat by Alien Sharks on the Discovery Channel.
That's disappointing.
I know.
Sci-Fi had Zombie Sharknado or Zombie
Oh
Sharks
my
or something like that.
God.
Yeah, yeah. I don't normally like watch or flip through. I have the shows that I watch and I don't like look through the menu or anything. And I was flipping past it the other day and it was like Zombie Sharks on Sci-Fi. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's so no. Like
That, who does that?
I
Zombie
didn't
Sharks.
watch Sharknado, but I get the whole fun campiness meta. We're making fun of ourselves, David Hasselhoff, Tara Reid type thing.
Right?
But you literally jumped the shark. Like, stop. Enough. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
don't know. Anyway, so the numbers were okay. I have to tell you, and I did tell you this, I looked at a review before I watched it, and the review said that this episode hit its stride for the season, and it was a reminder that there are fantastic things at play in the universe of Preacher.
Oh, excellent.
So I liked that review a lot. So
Well,
of course I quoted it.
we are halfway through the season, so it's about time we start hitting the stride.
Right?
Yep, this is episode 6 of 13, so we're mid-season now.
which is kind of a bummer. I don't want to be mid-season. I'm even though I didn't really like the last episode, I'm enjoying it too much for us to be this far along in the season.
It's six of one, half dozen the other, because I'm like, I don't want to be mid-season, but it also means that we're gonna get a whole lot of story a lot quicker. A lot of things are gonna start happening, and some questions may be answered, and of course, new questions will come up inevitably. But yeah, I'm excited for the things yet to come.
All right, so I'm such a Walking Dead geek that I thought you were going to say, but it means we're that much closer to the premiere of Walking Dead.
Oh, yeah, it does. It's September 11th, and I think Walking Dead is September 10th, isn't it?
Well, but I was thinking the real series, not Fear, but...
Oh, yeah. That's true.
So the title, Sokosha or Sokosha, however you say it, you and I both looked at the same Reddit link.
Yep.
Where someone said it meant armored vehicle in Japanese, and someone else said it meant the bottom person in Japanese. And I thought, that's really funny because they're both pretty pertinent considering the fate of the cowboy in this episode.
It does, and it's really interesting that we had to do a deep dive for the meaning of Sokosha.
No pun intended.
Well, now that I think about it, yes, definitely intended. But I mean, it's funny that it wasn't, it was never mentioned in the episode. It's not something that's like, the first thing on Google, or you couldn't find it on Wikipedia. We had to, go as far as going to a Reddit thread on
Right.
Preacher.
And I wasn't going to do it because I was going to be a purist and say, no, I'm not going to read anything else before we podcast. But I thought, I've got to figure out what Sokosha means.
Right. And that was my only thing is like, it wasn't in the episode that I could find. And I was like, and what's funny is I thought, well, maybe it's like an acronym, like on Fear the Walking Dead, they had Teotihuacan, which is the end of
right.
You know it. So I was like, maybe it's like some sort of acronym or something. And it's funny because somebody on Reddit came up with an acronym for it and I started off the same way this guy did. Sokosha, Sokosha. Saint of all killers orders soul, heaven awaits. That's amazing. Shout out to you, random Reddit dude.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, because it totally fits. And Sokosha, S-O-K, I was like, Saint of Killers, Saint of Killers, Saint of, and he nailed it. Like, yeah. But no, apparently
really
it means
funny.
armored car in Japanese.
Does it mean armored car or does it mean bottom person? Do we know for sure which it really means?
I saw two things that said armored car and one thing that bottom person, so I'm going to say 2-1. It means armored car.
We need to find that 1 in a million listener that actually listens to us and speaks Japanese.
Yeah. Actually, I need to find that viewer that speaks French because I want to know what Dennis is saying all the time.
Well, I caught like one thing that he said because I took French in high school, but that was a million years ago.
I was going to say you also took German. So.
No, I took Russian.
Oh, okay.
So I took French and Russian, and I speak a little bit more Russian than I do French these days, which is not a whole heck of a lot. But that makes me ready for Victor and Dennis. So
Yep.
All right, so quick look at the writer and director. So the writer was Mary Laws, and we've talked about her a little bit because she has been an executive story editor for all of season 2 so far. And she also wrote Call and Response, Finish the Song, and He Gone from season 1. The only other thing that she's got credits for is a screenplay called The Neon Demon, excuse me.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's a Netflix or Amazon original that it was kind of supposed to be like a psychological thriller. It had Dakota Fanning and somebody else in it. I meant to watch it and I just didn't. Like something else caught my attention but it was one that I did want to see. But yeah, so I have heard of Neon Demon. It was one of those kind of art house studio type movies that everyone was like, "Oh, you have to see it." So.
And you didn't.
I didn't. Not yet. I'm still interested, and now this has piqued my interest again. So maybe I'll have to go and watch that instead of rewatching the entire first 6 seasons of Game of Thrones.
Or binging on Glee and Breaking Bad, which is what I've been thinking about doing. Which is weird, right? To binge on both of those simultaneously.
That is kind of an odd combination. And maybe they'll balance out your psyche, though.
Right. I think I need to spend more time meditating.
Maybe you can write your own musical screenplay about meth dealers.
Oh my god, that would be awesome. That would be totally awesome. Breaking Bad, the musical. Featuring Idina Menzel.
That's funny.
All right. Okay. The director, a guy named David Evans. So here's the thing that I thought was super interesting about David Evans. He actually has a documentary called My Nazi Legacy.
Oh my goodness.
Which I thought was just, I mean, it's this totally random, weird, not tie-in, but tie-in because we're watching Hitler in Hell this season.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in this. He directed the documentary, and it's two brothers. Actually, I'm sorry. I don't think they're brothers. It's two men whose fathers were highly placed in the Third Reich, and they're basically talking about just their realizations about what their fathers did during the war. Sounds pretty grim and morbid, but I'm kind of interested. Maybe I'll balance it out with another episode of Glee. Anyway, so I thought that was an interesting tie, but not tie. And then this guy just has tons of credits starting back in 1994. He's got credits for things like Downton Abbey, Robin Hood the series, this relatively new series called I'm Dying Up Here. Have you seen that?
No.
It looks like it's about stand-up comedy.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, you know, I didn't have a lot to say about either person, but I did think David Evans' Hitler tie was pretty interesting considering where we're going this season.
Very cool.
Did you choose a featured cast?
I didn't, because I don't think we had a lot of cast members that we hadn't done.
Well, so I chose Ronald Gutman, who is the guy who plays Dennis.
Okay.
Born in 1952, August 12th. So happy birthday, Ronald. It's coming up here really fast. And he was born in Belgium, so he is a native French speaker.
Ah.
He has credits starting back in 1975, and his IMDb page is really long. It's a lot of small stuff, you know, like time here and there on SVU and Criminal Intent and...
well, it looks like a lot of his stuff through the 90s was non-American.
Yeah, it was French or Belgian.
Right.
Yeah. He was in The Hunt for Red October, which I suspect he probably played a Russian in The Hunt for Red October, so I think that's funny.
What makes you think that?
And he
Typecasted much?
He had a pretty big stint on All My Children, which I also thought was really funny.
Oh.
So,
our sisters used to torture me with Days of Our Lives. Like any Young and the Restless, All My Children, Days of Our Lives, all of those, I'm like, ugh.
Okay, so I'm here to tell you that comes from our grandmother. And I think that's one of the few soaps still on the air, but I mean, I haven't watched it in centuries, so, or at least decades.
or as our grandparents have called them, our stories.
Right.
Gotta watch my stories.
I like these stories a lot better.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I thought because we finally learned about Dennis, and because Dennis suddenly became a lot nearer and dearer to us, that I thought I would just say, shout out to Ronald Gutman.
Yes. You know, it's funny. I was reading. I normally don't go and read like other people's breakdowns of the episode or opinions or anything like that. But in my search for what Sokosha was, I did read. I think it was the Den of Geek. They were saying that they thought that maybe Cassidy was kind of just saying that Dennis was his son to pull at Tulip's heartstring, and I'm like, no,
I don't think so. Totally think it was true.
Yeah, that's why my rating was bunny-eared shoelaces, because Cassidy went to help Dennis tie his shoes, and he did the whole bunny ears thing to help him tie his shoelaces, and that is something a father would do for a son. So I don't think that was, a nefarious lie or anything. I really think that is Cassidy's son.
Well, so the thing that I thought was just the last time we recorded, we both said Cassidy would be a great dad, right?
Yes, he would be
Little
the
did
fun
we
dad.
know.
Yep.
And sadly, I don't think he has been such a great dad.
I don't either. I really wonder when the last time he saw his son was. He seems to be a globe-trotting
119-year-old Irish vampire.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's get into it. What was your gospel? What was your good?
My good was just that we found out Dennis's who Dennis was, and that he was an important person. He wasn't just some random. I keep going back to the whole. There's somewhere out there. There's a vampire cabal that is supposed to be helping Cassidy.
Oh, and right. I haven't thought about them in a really long time.
And I thought maybe Dennis, and this is me going back to my Buffy days, I thought maybe Dennis was like some sort of retired watcher or something that Cassidy decided to rely on, that he could trust and everything. And to find out, I absolutely love finding out that Dennis is his son, and she kind of nailed it. She expected it to be a relative of his, just not that close of a relative. And now we know vampires can get people pregnant, apparently.
Well, and I'm wondering how on earth that happened. But yeah hopefully they'll explain a little more about that.
Yeah, so the whole thing about, we finally have the forward momentum of the season and everything, that we're getting a lot of questions answered, but it's bringing up new ones, So, like, who was Dennis's mom, it was Dennis seems to be. I don't think he was imported in New Orleans. I don't think, because I think he's supposed to be portrayed as French Creole. I think,
Right, you thought he was from New Orleans. I thought he was from New Orleans.
Right, and so, obviously Cassidy was here, 60, 70 years ago, however old Dennis is supposed to be. I have so many more questions about this, but I absolutely love that they revealed that Dennis is Cassidy's son.
I really loved it too. I thought that was a really cool part of this episode, and I was glad that they answered the question, and I liked the way that they answered the question. I thought it was a good twist.
Yeah. Definitely. So what was your good?
So mine was the whole soul storyline. I just thought it was so interesting, the idea of being able to harvest part of a soul, and then especially looking at the cold open where that woman was clearly suffering from some sort of dementia, and then she got this bite, 15% of this guy's soul, and all of a sudden she came back to herself. So what happens? Does that part of the soul replace the missing parts of your soul? Does it somehow draw your soul back to you? I mean, I'm just curious to know how it's all supposed to work.
Well, according to the guy in the armored car, the Japanese guy, it's like an organ transplant. It basically takes the place of, because you have to be a match or close enough to a match, and it takes the place of, a kidney or a lung or whatever you're lacking.
But does it adhere all of your broken parts of soul together? Does it just replace missing parts of soul? I don't quite. And I know I'm digging a little too deep here, but it was just interesting to me.
Yeah, it is super interesting. You actually, this was my ugly.
Oh, that's so funny because we reversed because my revelation was Dennis. But anyway, go ahead.
So I had all sorts of questions at the same time. It was like, well, do you get a piece of that other person? Is why, if it's close enough of a match, but what if that other person is not a good person? Do you get a piece of them? Do you get a piece of that evil?
Well, and when that lady's eyes kind of popped open and darted around a little bit, I thought, oh no, this is going to go bad.
Yeah, but it's only 15%. I mean, is it like stem cells?
Can your 85% overwhelm the 15%? Right. Is it like stem cells? Does it mold and become part of you? Or, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a super interesting thing. And I was also like, is that what you expected a soul to look like? Like almost like a green blob
Well,
of
so
jellified uranium.
at first I wasn't quite sure what they were doing, and then when he held up the test tube and it had that kind of, it almost looked like Odo from Deep Space Nine, when he would morph.
I actually didn't watch Deep
Oh
Space
my
Nine.
God, I can't believe you
I
didn't watch Deep Space Nine.
I was a TNG girl.
Oh my God. Okay, well, anyway, it kind of looked like the shapeshifter when he was morphing in Deep Space Nine, and I thought, is that a soul? And then, of course, it was answered a little later in the episode, and I was like, okay.
Well, when he actually stuck the needle in, it was like this glowing green gob thing. And
Right.
my maybe I'm just a victim of the previous representation of like things, souls and things. I always figured it was like an aura or maybe a shadow of you. Like, I would have never. But then again, look at what it kind of looks like Genesis, except for Genesis is black and white.
Oh, well, but Genesis is part demon and part angel, so that makes
Right.
sense, right?
Right. So you would think a demon soul would be black and an angel soul would be white,
Now
or
we're getting
you know,
really literal, but yeah.
but stereotypically, but so humans, it looked very similar to Genesis, except for that it was green and it wasn't. Yeah. So
Yeah, no, I just thought the whole storyline was really interesting, and I enjoyed that. I thought it was a big, I mean, I don't know, I haven't read this far in the comic books. I thought it was a big departure.
well, and
So,
I also think that it's way more, and the soul dealers are the soul merchants are way more interesting than this
the
men in
Cabal.
white,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the men in the white coats that
Yeah.
are also looking for God.
Oh God, what are they? The cryptofascists.
Cryptofascists. Thank you, the non-lizard people, cryptofascists.
Right. Yeah, not
um
to be confused with the reptilians.
right.
Yes.
I really think that the soul merchants are a lot, because I mean, obviously they have a history of this, because Jesse knew about it and he knew where to go for one, and there's apparently tens of other dealers in New Orleans.
Well,
So
and there's some really interesting stuff around Jesse and the soul dealers, and we'll talk more about that. I think when we get to our word.
oh, good.
Yeah, because there's some cool stuff there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, what was your Job? What was your bad?
So it's always like a James Bond film where you can just never just kill somebody and be done with it. You have to sink your enemy into an armored car and then bury his weapons in a vulnerable old man's bathroom. Like,
Oh God, I love that. I mean, I totally am not entirely sure why Jesse put his weapons in Dennis's bathroom, but I like the description of bury his weapons in a vulnerable old man's bathroom.
well, I mean, it's seriously like, the stereotypical Bond film or even parody of a Bond film where, you have to tell the other guy your plans before you slowly kill him and not witness it. And so really, like, this, and maybe that's Jesse's hubris in knowing that the cowboy now has to obey his word, that he doesn't think the cowboy is a threat anymore. But why not kill him? Why not rid yourself of this threat? Why did he have to go bury him in the swamp where he's going to escape?
Okay, I will do you one slightly better. Why didn't he just send him to heaven?
Okay, and that too.
I really wish that he had just done
would-
that. That would have been the good thing for Jesse to do. It would have made the sacrifice of his soul part of his soul that much more valuable. And why not? He could have done a good thing with the word, and he didn't.
Right. I mean, for a second there, I was like, is that even possible? I mean, I would imagine.
Well, me too. I was like, he's totally BSing the cowboy. And then he was like, I sent a man to hell. I went, oh, right. Yeah, he actually did.
I really don't think that there's a doorman at hell.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure there's a doorman in heaven going, you're not getting in tonight, honey.
But Jesse has the power of Genesis. He has the power of the word. So
And
I
God
think...
is not in heaven, so
Right.
they've got bigger problems.
Right.
Yeah, under normal circumstances, I would highly doubt that Jesse could actually get somebody to heaven. At the very least, I think that if you ordered someone to heaven, they would be stuck in some sort of limbo because heaven
Mm,
wouldn't accept you, but hell let anyone in.
yeah, I'm actually, just because we've got that added um, interest of the word, and because we've got that added power, I think that he actually could do it.
Yeah, and I expected him to do it. It really surprised me that
I
he
did
did.
too, and I was really incredibly disappointed that he didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it would have neatly packaged up the story of the cowboy, which is probably part of the reason it didn't happen.
Yeah, and there was actually AMC. They do um, a Q&A with the actors sometimes,
Right?
and they did a Q&A
Oh, with
with
Graham McTavish.
who
Oh,
played the
cool.
Saint of All Killers,
Yeah.
and one of the things was, let's see, do they it went on, the Saint was offered a deal to take Jesse, get Genesis, kill Jesse,
And then go to
and
heaven.
right. And so he was offered a deal, business, all business, straight up and down business. Now it's personal, you know?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was kind of hoping that maybe the Saint of All Killers would come back, the cowboy would come back and maybe be an ally to Jesse, but at this point, I don't think so. Jesse double crossed him, and so now it's personal.
Well, and it was really interesting. We were talking about how we don't usually go and look at reviews, but I also looked at one that said something about, Jesse being manipulative and lying to the saint and all of that. And I was like, no, he actually was pretty honest with him. I mean, he
He
didn't
was.
he didn't lie to him about God being missing. He didn't manipulate him into to taking the deal with him. But then at the end, he was horrible and he lied just in terms of not sending the saint to heaven after all.
Yeah. Yeah. So that'll bring me into a little bit of our word where they're not so different after all.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So what was yours?
So my Job was what happened to Tulip and Jesse. So Tulip is obviously shaken by being touched by the saint.
Yes.
Jesse is obviously shaken and changed by losing 1% of his soul. I liked the way they opened with him looking in the mirror and kind of smiling and being a little goofy, and then at the end just being really grim, once again looking at himself in the mirror. And I was like,
Definitely.
what does Jesse see that's different? Because there's obviously something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking about the long-term repercussions. I mean, I think the long-term repercussions of what happened to both Jesse and Tulip in this episode are going to be interesting, and I think they're going to stick with us and play throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah, I mean, the sales pitch was that there are no known complications for losing up to 15% of your soul,
Right.
but
You won't
you
even miss
know,
it.
yeah, that's the sales pitch, but 1% of the soul for somebody who's carrying the word, and I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, and giving over 1% of your soul when you carry the word to someone like the cowboy.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I think it has very, very interesting repercussions.
yeah. We shall see.
Yeah.
Hopefully, hopefully.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
I do too.
So, what was your revelation? You said your revelation was Dennis. No.
No, your revelation was this.
My sorry.
My revelation was the soul merchants.
Okay.
Like I said, I think this is a much more interesting storyline than the government guys in the white coats. And I have so many questions about it. And like organ donation, you must be enough of a match for it to take. I kind of want to know what happens when it doesn't take. Do you just revert back to yourself with dementia, or
Right.
does something horrendous happen? And Jesse and the cowboy were a match. They were close enough of a match that, in fact, they were actually a closer match than the woman that we saw with dementia. So, getting a little ahead of ourselves in the numbers, the little machine that weighs whether or not you're a match or not, the people doing it for the money and the woman with dementia, their numbers were LB4004A and LB4004C. So A and C, I would imagine it goes A, B, C, D.
Right.
So they were two off. Well, Jesse and the cowboy were XX7000A and XX7000B.
So they're very,
So
very close.
they're very, very close. So I'm just, losing 1% of your soul and having such a similarity to someone who is the saint of all killers.
Mm-hmm.
What does that do for either of you on both sides? What is losing 1% of your soul there, and the cowboy gaining 1% of the soul, and the whole, the transfer, like we said, is this just like stem cells where they're just going to fill in the gaps of you? Or is this some sort of transfer of consciousness? Is the saint going to have some sort of extra power, with Genesis being inside of Jesse? I have so many more questions. This is just, I absolutely love this storyline, and I hope that we see a lot more than what we've seen.
So I'm going to add a little bit to your revelation. This is not part of mine, but this is pertinent to what you were talking about. Mm-hmm. So when Jesse is talking with the person who used to be a soul dealer in the voodoo shop, Jesse introduces himself as Jesse L'Angel. L'Angel means the angel.
Wow.
I did a little more reading, and his mother's name was Christina L'Angel.
Wow.
So there's some backstory, some back theory that maybe Jesse's mom and her family was involved in soul trading, and that's how he knows so much about soul trading.
So digging a little further in that, Genesis is the progeny of an angel and a demon, a devil.
Oh, wouldn't that be crazy if it was Jesse's parents?
Jesse's parents, the angel and a devil, because his dad wasn't a good guy.
Right.
Oh,
and maybe his dad was just masquerading as a preacher to try to be good.
I have chills.
Me too. Well, and so here's the other thing. Tulip looks at Jesse and she says, "How do you know about all this stuff?" And he says, "Family business."
Yes.
So it really does tie into Jesse L'Angel, Christina L'Angel. It just is very interesting. It's very tangled, and I hope that they take us down this road. I hope it doesn't just go away after this episode.
Yeah. I'm really hoping that this is a Walking Dead, Game of Thrones type thing where there are no wasted lines.
The long play. Yeah.
Yep. Because like I said, I'm actually rewatching the first 6 seasons of Game of Thrones, and I'm going back, and it's like you guys with The Walking Dead, where you're going back and you're looking, you're like, oh my gosh, that thing that's happening now is like the thing that they foretold in season 3, episode 2, or something that was said here, or it relates back to this, and so maybe hopefully if we continue to get seasons of Preacher, we'll be able to go back and go, oh. Jesse's mother was the angel.
Oh my god. We're such geeks. Yeah. I love it.
We are. That's awesome.
So I actually had 2 reveals in my revelation. So one was the Dennis reveal, which I thought was really awesome. And the other was the reveal of the cowboy's remaining backstory, including the bargain about him getting his soul back so he can be with his family.
Right.
I liked the way they revealed it. I really liked the whole scene in the library. It was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Did that come up in your numbers at all?
It did.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, I
Yes.
think you and I have the same number.
I think we have
So
the same numbers.
I'm gonna pause for a little bit of fan shout out. Ruthie Rink.
Yes, Ruthie,
Yes,
thank you for listening and thank you for commenting.
yes, she really likes the numbers that we do,
And I gave you credit. I did.
Diane did give me credit. So it's just a super fun thing to do, and sometimes it pans out, and sometimes it just totally falls flat, and sometimes there are no numbers. But I have to tell you, this episode had a ton of numbers. I don't think all of them meant a thing, everything, but there were a few ones that kind of hit the nail on the head. So
So
we're really happy.
they were a little overwhelming, but there was also some really cool stuff, and I'm looking forward to seeing if you and I had the same stuff or not.
Right, right.
Yeah, so Ruthie, thank you. And I was telling Marnell that it actually means that you listen all the way to the end because we usually do the numbers at the end.
Exactly. Either that or she skips all the way to the end, which
Right.
is fine too.
I just want the numbers. And by the way, I did look Ruthie up, and she is one of the hosts of the Walking Dead Talk Through. So if anybody's looking for a non-biters Walking Dead podcast, check Ruthie and her friends out.
You can't listen to too many Walking Dead
This is
podcasts.
very true. I mean, we do one, and I listen to other podcasts. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's fun to get everyone else's little opinions or takeaways or things that they noticed that you didn't. Which is why we have at least two people hosting, is because it would be really boring with just one person, just talking about the episode with themselves.
I've listened to some podcasts that are just, one person hosting, and I definitely enjoy the interplay between a couple of hosts more.
Yeah, yeah.
And not speaking specifically to Walking Dead podcasts, I was actually thinking about You Must Remember This. Have you listened to that?
I haven't.
It's actually really interesting. It's more of a radio show format, and the episodes that I listened to explored the Manson murders.
Oh wow.
They were pretty interesting. So You Must Remember This. If you're interested in the Manson murders, there's a whole set about that. So
Very serious subject matter.
yeah, just a little.
Yeah.
All right, the word.
The word.
So tell me what you got before we get to the numbers.
Let's see. There were. I think we've gone through a lot of them. Yeah. I don't think that I have very much because we've gone through just all the really high points for this episode. One of mine was the whole backstory with Jesse and being able to walk into a voodoo store and be able to point stuff out and know what he's talking about.
Oh yeah, it completely cracked me up when he was like, "What did I write down? You have an uprooter, a pump, a scale, and a spinner."
And that's not something we've seen from Jesse's backstory. We've seen Jesse with Tulip. We haven't seen the time that he spent. I guess before him and Tulip got together, or before he became the preacher. And yeah, so it was just, it was really, that took me off balance because I wasn't expecting him to. We haven't seen anything. Like, are we going to see more of that?
I think we will. I mean, I think that there's a lot more story to tell.
So much story to tell.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, definitely.
So I mentioned that I caught a little bit of Dennis's rant, and when he and Cassidy were in the bedroom and he was like ranting at Cass, at one point I did hear him say "tais-toi," which is shut up. I'm like, oh, I'm glad that my high school French still serves me in some small way.
I'm like, this needs subtitles or something. This isn't fair. I think I've mentioned this on one of our other podcasts. It may have been this one. I don't know. But the movie Logan, which is the latest Wolverine movie,
which we bought and I haven't watched yet.
The little girl doesn't speak English throughout the entire movie. She speaks Spanish. And so I'm like, that is really not fair because like they're not subtitling it. It's from this perspective of Logan. And so he doesn't understand what the little girl is saying. And so the audience, I guess, isn't supposed to understand what the little girl is saying, but it's really, really not fair for people who are bilingual, you know? Like, they know what she is yelling about, and I don't. And so I kind of feel that way with this, that, like, Dennis is yelling about something, and somebody else is getting a better takeaway than I am, and it's not fair.
Oh, that's funny. Well,
So.
I gotta tell you, I mentioned it before, but I'm gonna go there again. I love the library scene, and it cracked me up that they found American Psychopaths in multiple volumes as a book on tape.
On book on tape, yeah.
And that's part of our numbers.
What's funny is, again, this going back to my Buffy viewing days, is that it totally reminded me, and they called themselves the Scooby Gang. It totally reminded me of the Scooby Gang sitting around a musty old library researching demons, you know?
I bet it was a nod. I bet it was totally a nod to...
it would not surprise me to find out that, like, Seth Rogen is a Buffy fan, you know? Or at the very, very least, a Joss Whedon fan. So it took me back. It was very funny. And Cassidy was sitting there reading the Preacher comic. Did you notice that?
Yes, I thought that was so cool. I looked at it and I was like, those are drawings of the Saint of all killers. I wonder if those are actually Preacher comics.
Yes, because in a couple of the storyboard lines, it showed Tulip as her comic book character as a blonde white woman. Yeah, yes. And I was like, oh, that is so meta.
Oh, speaking of meta, I did want to mention that Ruthie appropriately corrected me in that Mark Harlick is the actor who played himself playing God. He was not the actor who played Victor, and we talked about that in the follow-up episode to that. But thank you, Ruthie.
Yes.
Meta.
Yeah. It was so meta we got lost.
Right. I like that. So meta we got totally confused.
Exactly. I did love the hardware store bomb.
Yes.
Yeah, that didn't actually wind up working. I mean, it went boom, but apparently our Sokosha was very, very armored.
Yes.
And that, and I knew when you heard the sirens and Jesse turned around, I'm like, oh, there's his ride. That was great.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. So I'm hauling us back to the library again. So we found out what the cowboy's hell is, which is watching his dead daughter get her eyes eaten out by crows again and again and again.
Right, but he has to go through everything. You know, I kind of actually saw a parallel in this episode of the cowboy's hell having to go right off and get medicine for his daughter.
And Jesse, or Cassidy.
And Jesse having to go and get a soul for the cowboy and having to leave Cassidy and Tulip behind.
So I was like Cassidy and Dennis being sick.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's that. But, I mean, there was just a big parallel of them having to leave the ones that they love, the ones that they care about, in search for a cure or a soul or medicine or, something, and racing against the clock to get back. And the cowboy didn't make it, but Jesse did. Just barely.
Yes.
I mean, Cassidy lost his fingers for Jesse to make it, but...
Fortunately, he can grow them back.
Yeah, exactly. And he's taking Dennis to the hospital, and as we know, hospitals are all-you-can-eat buffets for vampires. So that worked out.
Yeah, so he'll get his fingers back quicker.
Well, they were past that the first knuckle that I could... No, the second knuckle.
I wouldn't repair that in my clinic.
Well, I accidentally cut off the tip of one of my knuckles one time. It was it was right down to the bone. It was a giant chunk of skin. And so I get to the hospital and I'm like holding on a paper towel and everything. And of course, the second you take the paper towel off, the blood just goes everywhere. And like, I think I was like 20 years old, and I'm like, I'm in my opinion, severely injured, and I'm really not in my right head. I'm freaking out, I'm bleeding. And the doctor or the nurse looks at me and they were like, "Where's the chunk of skin?"
See, I wouldn't have even bothered to sew that flap back on because it wouldn't have taken, most likely. You would have lost it anyway. It just would have been a fancy band-aid with some stitches.
Yeah, but it was much, much better because the first time that they repaired it, they just put like gauze over it.
Oh,
And
did you send someone to go get the chunk of skin?
No. When they just stopped the bleeding and wrapped it and everything, and they gave me a little splint so that I couldn't bend my finger, so I always looked like I was finger wagging everybody because it was my pointer finger. And so I couldn't bend my finger for a while. Well, I went to change the bandage, and of course the blood had clotted to the wound. So the minute you take the bandage off, it rips the wound wide open again. And so I went back to the hospital because there was no like clinic or anything where I was. And this time the smart person actually wrapped it in that Teflon tape stuff, and it didn't coagulate to the Teflon tape, and it healed just fine and everything. But it just, I saw Cassidy like taking Dennis to the hospital, and he was like duct taping his hand or something. And his fingers were sitting on the floor, and I'm like, they're going to ask you where the fingers are.
It was good. I really liked Cassidy losing his fingers and growing them back.
Yes. And thankfully he can grow them back.
Yes.
And for future reference, isn't it like, aren't you supposed to like put them in milk if you lose a finger or something?
No, that's a tooth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't take that piece of advice, guys. Don't put your severed digits in milk. If you lose a tooth, put your tooth in milk.
Okay, then just put it on ice and
Right.
take it with you.
Ice is good.
Yeah,
Although,
so they can reattach.
oh my God. So I once took care of someone who degloved a digit, which basically means peeled all the skin off. And
I knew.
it was
Yeah.
like this perfect little tube of finger. Yeah, we couldn't fix it.
Now this is going to the My Favorite Murder podcast where they actually they fillet the finger off of a corpse or something to take the fingerprint because you can put it over your finger like a glove and do the rollout of the fingerprint.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
no. We didn't quite go there, but we weren't able to fix it either. It was pretty gruesome.
But no, I'm like, why? I guess maybe because he doesn't need to have them sewn back on. He's going to regrow them.
Right.
But I seriously was looking at his digits on the floor going, take those with you. Oh.
We're goofballs.
We are.
Okay. I don't know that I've got anything else.
Besides the number.
Shut your French mouth and listen to me. No, besides the numbers.
Oh. So I will how about you do one, I do one?
Okay. So the first number that I saw, let me get to my page, was 15.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's 15% of the soul.
Yes.
And so the stuff that I came across was 15 in the Bible symbolizes rest after deliverance. So after you've been through this big thing, this big transition, it's time to rest, which I thought was right on because that the guy who sacrificed 15% of his soul ended up being sedated and sleeping it off.
Right.
And it also, the other thing that I wrote down, there were quite a few things, but there were 15 promises made to Christians in the book of Matthew.
Well, and rest is restorative, and we saw that it restored the woman with dementia. So,
Right. Oh, very interesting. Good catch.
Yeah. I actually, for 15, I found John 15. John 15 in the Bible, the vines and the branches. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that bears fruit he prunes, so that will be ever more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, and I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me.
Well, that
So,
is like, that's kind of about soul harvesting and the soul being
right.
healthy and.
And remain in me.
Hmm.
Yeah, like that gave me chills when I read that. I was like, wow, no branch can bear no fruit unless you remain in me.
Okay, Chris Hardwick, you need to talk to us.
Put more biblical numbers in The Walking Dead. Or
Right.
give us our own show, Talking Preacher.
Well, they've got Talking Preacher, so he just needs to do Talking Preacher with us.
Exactly.
Okay, so what number do you have next?
I had also John 14, and I can't remember. Oh, 14
So
was
14 was the door that our merry little band of pranksters was actually behind. That was the actual number of Dennis's apartment.
it 14 or 19?
So 19 was the apartment that the cowboy went into first, and 14 was the apartment that our merry little band was actually in.
Okay. So John 14, Jesus comforts his disciples. Do not let your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If they were not so, I
Oh, my father's
would,
house has many
right,
rooms.
would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, and you may also be where I am. You know the way to my place and where I am going.
You know how to find God, and you know where I'm going.
Exactly.
Ah, that's so cool.
And my house has many rooms. Yeah,
Hmm.
like it was just so on the nose for me.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That,
Did you find anything with 14?
that was John 14?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I didn't look at any specific number, or didn't look at any specific verses. So 14 is a multiple of 7, and it's
Mm-hmm.
double spiritual perfection. And then
Uh,
I thought, so it was deliverance and salvation. The ministry in the flesh is completed, meaning Jesus's life is completed. And Jesus's life also ended the need for animal sacrifice. His crucifixion ended the need for animal sacrifice. So that was the double deliverance, double salvation. His ministry was over, and he freed us from having to do animal sacrifice. The other thing that was interesting is the generation in Christ's genealogy from Abraham to David, 14 generations.
so freeing us from having to do animal sacrifice when he finally found Jesse and everyone in the apartment 14, he didn't have to kill any more people on that floor.
There you go. I like that. So I'm going to haul us back to the woman with dementia and her soul number and the soul number of the guy who donated.
Yes. Okay.
So 4004 is important in the chronology of the church because the people who believe that the world has only existed for like 6,000 years
Mm-hmm.
believe that the year that Christ came into the world was the year 4004.
Yes.
You found that too.
I did. And I also found something that I didn't know when I found that is that there are 4 lost years in our calendar.
Really?
Yes. So when everyone kind of kept their own calendars, and because we didn't have leap years back then,
Right?
there are actually the calendars, when they decided to merge all of the calendars in the entire world go onto one, they were about 4 years off.
That's
And
really interesting.
so there are 4 lost years that we kind of jump around to. So it's very inexact. Yeah.
Hence the significance of 4.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. But I thought that was interesting that they thought Jesus was born in 4004 too. Yeah.
So your next number.
Psalms 19 for the other apartment number. Psalms 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech, night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into the earth, into the world, and the ends of the world. In the heavens has pitched a tent for the sun. It is a bridegroom coming for his chamber, like a champion rejoicing to run its course. It rises at one end of the heavens and makes circuit to the other. Nothing is deprived of its warmth.
Okay, that was really long, so translate.
So it talks about not using speech and not using the word or sound.
Okay.
So, I think that goes back to the whole, Tula pointed it out in this episode. If you wouldn't use the word, he wouldn't be able to find us,
right.
if you would just remain silent. So I think that was a little bit pertinent to our episode, and that was Psalms 19. Did you have anything for 19?
I did. So 19, if you use the numbers of Job and Eve, if you use the numbers that make up those names, it equals the number 19. And it's the number of surrender or endurance. 1 is the beginning and 9 is ending.
Surrender and endurance.
Mm-hmm.
So surrendering to the cowboy, or surrendering to the word, or
surrendering to divine will.
Yeah. Or enduring things.
Great hardships and trials.
Right. Because the cowboy was entirely prepared to go back to hell, and he wasn't sure that Jesse would be able to send at least, just 1% of his soul to hell.
Right.
The cowboy could endure.
Yeah, no, it was... Okay, so...
What was your next number?
It was 1861 and 1881. So
okay.
The year that the year that the cowboy got his start as the Butcher of Gettysburg.
Right. I think we've gone through a couple of these in earlier episodes because they were relating to the cowboy.
Well, in 1881 was when he died. But here's the interesting thing. So there's a 20-year gap between those 2 years. 20 in the Bible is completion or a perfect waiting period.
Okay, so 20. The number of Jesse and the cowboy's souls were XX 7,000.
Oh, you're right.
X is 20.
Yes, it is.
Yes, X is 10. In Roman numerology, X is 10, so XX is 20. So that is super duper interesting.
Oh, that's very good.
I did not even catch that until you said it was a 20-year gap.
Okay, so here's the other thing I wanted to say about the Butcher of Gettysburg. So I ran across this one reference on the internet where this woman basically wrote this post about how there was a serial killer who was the Butcher of Gettysburg.
Wow.
Which was weird. I didn't follow down that rabbit hole because I didn't find any more than just her post. And then the other thing is that Ulysses S. Grant, the general who eventually became our president, was nicknamed the Butcher during the Civil War.
Huh.
So those aren't numbers, but I thought those were interesting additions to the whole Civil War imagery and the cowboy imagery and all of that.
Yeah, that is. And, I think I have mentioned this on a previous podcast, but I really wonder Jesse Custer's family. Custer, George Armstrong Custer.
Right, and we've talked about Custer before and the Custer imagery.
Right. Because, the Alamo and everything like that, I really wonder if there's going to be some sort of deep connection between the Custer family and the cowboy,
Or are we just diving way, way deeper than Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen ever will?
Maybe like they should hire us as
I think they should.
Writers. Like
I think that's an excellent plan.
Co-written by Tulip and Cassidy. That's too funny.
So next number. 50.
So
okay, go ahead.
Are you going to do 57?
Well, you can do 57 and I'll do 58.
Okay. So the number 57 was the episode that the Saint of All Killers was on the Book of Tapes,
American
or
Psychopaths.
American Psychopaths, that Tulip was listening to. And 57, I found Isaiah 57. The righteous perish and no one takes it to heart. The devout are taken away and no one understands. That the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. Those who walk uprightly enter into peace and find the rest they lie in death.
That's the Cowboys family.
Yes.
The righteous are taken away to be spared from evil.
And no one takes it to heart. No one cared except for the cowboy.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. But the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the Cowboys family. That gives me chills
And then
too.
those who walk uprightly enter into peace. They find rest as they lie in death. So, does that mean that eventually, when we see them again, the cowboy again, maybe Jesse will kill the cowboy and send him to heaven, and he will rest in death?
Right. Does it mean that the cowboy will finally get some peace?
Yes. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Like, I find him to be, although he's supposed to be kind of an evil soulless character, I find sympathy in him.
Well, and it's because of the tragedy of the way he became evil and soulless, right? His soul shattered when he saw his dead wife and child.
Yes. Yes, they went to the four corners of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 58 was Dick Cheney's number in American Psychopaths. Oh, thank you so much, Seth Rogen. I love you so much. And it actually it had two meanings in the Bible. It had the meaning of grace, which we see the theme of grace repeated over and over, but it also refers to someone who lives a worldly life, which I thought was much more appropriate for Dick Cheney.
That's interesting. So the Isaiah 57 I found in the New International Version Bible, and Isaiah 58 was from the New Living Translation. And so I figured if some people who live by the Bible can pick and choose, I can pick and choose. But what it really is
remember to send your hate mail to Brian Williams at the 11th hour, care of MSNBC.
So, and I say that kind of jokingly because the only difference that I can find is the somebody else had a better thesaurus when they were doing the translation. And so some of them are a little more understandable and not old timey thou, thouest, thine,
right.
So the Isaiah 58 in the New Living Translation, true and false worship. Shout the voice of triumph blast. Shout aloud, don't be timid. Tell me, people of Israel, of their sins, yet they act so pious. So that was my Dick Cheney part of the... Tell me, people of Israel, of their sins, yet they act so pious.
That's really funny.
So,
sorry.
If you look at Isaiah 58 in a different version, different translation, you will find some different wording. So I pick and chose that one because it fit for me.
Remember Brian Williams, the 11th hour, MSNBC.com.
I'm hoping that people who are watching Preacher and taking the time to listen to a Preacher podcast have a little bit of sense of humor about our left-leaning politics. Because we sure do.
That's right. For the most part. Occasionally. Not always.
Only if I've had enough sleep.
Right.
All right, so we've done 57 and 58. Did you have any more numbers?
I did. I had a bunch more numbers.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
I had a bunch more numbers, but I couldn't find a lot of meaning behind them, so shoot.
Okay, so 5 o'clock, right?
Ooh,
which is the time when the cowboy and preacher come up with their deal. Because he gives Preacher an hour, and that's 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So 5 is associated with grace. Here's that repetitive theme of grace. Also, 5 loaves of bread were multiplied by Christ to feed the 5,000.
Oh.
Right? I told you I could go on forever.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
any more?
Anymore. I had a ton of numbers. So, we were talking about before the podcast, we
They can be
had the
overwhelming.
yeah, we had the $150,000 for the 15% of the soul. We didn't find anything for 150,000.
Nor did we find the 2.7 million nice little turn of profit.
Yeah, holy crap! Like I sell you like 15% of my soul and get 150,000, and you sell it for $2.7 million.
You
Dang.
know,
I
we
mean,
could split the difference. I could take $1.35 million and that would be fine.
I know that I'm sure that all of the overhead for soul merchants is pretty big because that was a killer, literally. Uh, Sokosha,
But you
Sokasha,
know, I mean, really,
car.
all you really need is an uprooter, a pump, a scale, and a spinner.
Yeah,
Can't be that
yeah. I mean,
expensive.
apparently, voodoo priests have been doing it for years.
Right.
They didn't need an armored car.
And they sure as heck weren't turning a nice profit like that.
No, and it kind of makes me wonder how much a soul was before
Before the Japanese moved in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like maybe they didn't do something monetarily. Maybe like you owed some other sort of debt instead of money.
Or it's kind of like buying a Ford versus a Toyota. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
Wait, which one are you saying is bad?
Well, I mean, if I had to choose, I'd rather have a Toyota than a Ford.
Okay.
But I have a Charger and a big old Chevy Silverado, so.
Okay, yeah, we have a Corolla and we're about to go buy a Tacoma. So I was like, wait a minute, don't knock Toyota.
I loved my big green Tundra. It just wouldn't haul my huge horse trailer.
Yeah, Tundras are just a little bit too big. I'm not hauling horses around.
Well, it wasn't big enough. Trust me.
That's what she said.
All right, more numbers.
So there was something, I can't remember why I wrote it down, but there was a number 3
I missed it.
With it. It was associated. I have it written down next to when the technicians, the 2 armored car guys, are locked in the truck.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was like a street address or something. There was a street address of 900.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a 305A.
Mm-hmm.
And the license plate of the armored truck was
I missed the license plate.
it was AQ48535.
Okay.
I couldn't figure out anything in there with that.
All right, so there's got to be significance in 535 because one of the clock faces that Jesse was looking at, or his watch face when he was trying to get back to the cowboy, 535.
Okay, and so on the door of the voodoo shop, when he put the close sign up, it said, we'll be back at 5:35.
Okay, so chapter 5, verse 35. John was a lamp that burned and gave light, and you chose for a time to enjoy his light. There were also Mark and Matthew, chapter 5, verse 35, which didn't really hammer out quite as neatly, so I didn't write those down. But, you know, I thought about just that whole basking in someone else's light and taking advantage of that person's light.
Right.
So that's the significance of 5:35.
Okay.
Jesse at one point is looking, I think, again at his watch, and we see 5:15. Proverbs chapter 5, verse 15. Drink waters out of thy own cistern. Ephesians 5:15. See that when ye walk circumspectly. So they're both kind of verses about moral strictness and about behavior and keeping your behavior pure.
Behavior, not intention.
Correct.
Because I feel like there's an overall moral of people's intentions are always good, but they're, it doesn't mean what they're doing is good. Just if we didn't know Jesse and Tulip, these people would be criminals.
Right. It kind of goes to the whole Walking Dead thing. I mean, if we had met Negan's group before we met Rick's group, who would be the evil, right?
Right, exactly.
It's kind of the same with Jesse and Tulip. They're not very nice.
Will Wheaton, the villain, is always the hero of his own story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing it. Disney characters now. They're doing Disney movies where, they're showing it from Maleficent's perspective, and she's the more sympathetic character. It's like, the cowboy is a very sympathetic character, but if you just think of him as the saint of all killers who's hunting Jesse, no, he's not. But everyone has their own story, and they've gone through what they've gone through to bring them where they are. Mm-hmm. So that's super interesting.
Okay, we should probably wrap it up because I've got tons more.
Yeah, I know. The going back to what the matches for the souls. The woman's and her match was LB, which TLB stands for the Living Bible.
Oh, how funny!
Yeah, and so I was wondering when Jesse's and the Saints came up, they were XX, which is actually the only thing I could really find. Of course, was 20. 10 and 10, 20.
The perfect waiting period, the completeness.
It's XX is the female hormones.
That's funny.
Or it's the female not hormones, chromosomes.
Right.
So I thought that was a little baffling. So I would actually love to see more of the soul matching.
Well, I hope that we see more of the soul business altogether, and I think there's a good chance that we will, especially because now they've opened up again that we have to, well, we don't have to, but we've opened up that we can explore Jesse's past and his mother's past, and here's hoping, man.
Definitely. So our next episode will be entitled Pig.
Which apparently there's a flying pig.
Huh.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people owing stuff because, they say, when pigs fly, I'll do that.
It has the potential to be very interesting.
Interesting.
But
to say the least.
I really enjoyed this episode. We could keep talking about this episode. I think we're over an hour now.
Well, that makes up for, I think,
we're
the last
an hour and 12. So
the last two episodes have been short. So, yeah. All right.
Well, Tulip.
Till the end of the world.
Till the end of the world.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good week.
I left his body in the woods, and I took off running south. I left his body